This is the Galaxy A04. Let's test it out and see what it can do. So before we get started with the review, let's just touch on pricing for a bit. So the A04 starts at 280 New Zealand dollars, and it's available in some other regions worldwide. Although there is this weird thing where the A04 is the only model available in some regions, and its sister model, the A04S, is the only model available in other regions. This means the A04, the model that I'm reviewing, is not available in the UK or the US, but the A04S generally is. So if I were you, I'd go and check the Samsung website of each specific country to go and see which model's available in your region. The A04, what's in the box? You've firstly got the charger, you've got the USB-C cable, which is a good thing, it's got USB-C and not micro USB, and you've got a quick start guide. In addition to the phone itself, I'd say that's kind of important as well. So let's talk about design of the Samsung Galaxy A04. It's a design that I really like. It's tried and tested by Samsung and they've used it for many years. You've got a 6.5-inch screen on the front and you've got a teardrop notch. This notch also houses the 5 megapixel selfie camera. There's a bit of a chin at the bottom, but it doesn't make much of a difference. On the back, we have a glossy finish, which does pick up fingerprints. That's one non-ideal thing about it, but you can always just use a case. On the rear, you have a dual camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. I'll go more into the cameras later in the review and I'll talk more about them later. In terms of charging, the A04 has a USB-C port, which is a bonus considering its low price point. Phones that I've reviewed in the past, such as the Nokia C2 2nd edition, don't have this, so it's good that it's there. A headphone jack is also present, which is also a good thing since many phones don't have this in 2023. Otherwise, all the buttons are on the right side, with the power button being below the combined volume up and volume down buttons. I've got the black color version here, which looks great. There is also a green option, though I'm not so sure about that one. So now we'll go and talk about general use. The A04 runs okay considering its low price point, and the speed is decent. The A04 comes equipped with the MediaTek Helio P35 processor, and this is the same one that was found in the Samsung Galaxy A12. The phone also comes equipped with 3 gigs of memory and 32 gigabytes of internal storage. Needless to say, if you want to use the A04 without any slowdown, you will need to use a micro SD card. Luckily, this does have expansion for micro SD card. I did run an Antutu benchmark on the A04 and I got a score of 118,417. This is very low, but I feel like Samsung have optimized it very well. This is as long as you install a micro SD card or else you will have slowdown, as I saw when I used a Samsung in the past. I just want to say that the Galaxy A04 has dual SIM capability. The A04 is running Android 12 with One UI 4.1 laid over it. And the A04 will most likely get Android 13 and One UI 5 in due course. I'd say the phone runs Android reasonably well due to its low processor speed and the low price point. Things such as Google Assistant and all the Google apps and stuff come built into the phone. Tell me a joke.
What do you call someone with a brain in their underwear? Smarty pants.
The main difference of this between, say, the Nokia C2 2nd edition is the Nokia runs a thing called Android Go. Android Go is a more lightweight operating system designed for phones with, say, 1 or 2 gigabytes of RAM. What we have here is a full version of Android with another skin applied onto it. So if I were you, I'd just be careful with what apps you use, and I wouldn't expect high-end. This is not what this phone is marketed for. The A04 has a face unlock feature, which works well most of the time. However, it does not do well in the dark. But when you're in optimal lighting conditions, it works really well. There's no fingerprint scanner though, but it's understandable given this phone is a low price point of under 200 New Zealand dollars. In terms of media consumption, it does alright, and the large screen is good for watching videos. It's a 720 by 1600 screen, meaning it's HD+. When you're watching YouTube, it looks good, even though the max resolution is 1080p, not 4K. And the sound coming from the YouTube videos is also really good as well.
And then you have the 10th gen iPad at $449. Then the iPad mini comes in at $499.
It's nice and loud, it doesn't sound as polished as iPhone, but it still would be good for watching YouTube. Same for playing music, it's also nice and loud. Although I did notice that when you're on speakerphone and you're calling, it's a bit soft when you're on speakerphone. So that's just my only complaint about audio. So let's talk about battery a bit on the A04. So battery life is a really strong area on the phone. One day I was using it, I charged it up to 100%, left it on standby for a few hours, and it didn't drop at all, which is actually amazing considering that most phones drop at least a few percent when they're on standby. Then I went to run some benchmarks and I did some camera stuff and a whole bunch of different things, and it didn't drop much at all. In fact, I've been taking photos today and it's still on 93% after I've been using it since say 10 a.m. to take photos. So this is really, really amazing. The fact it doesn't drop on standby is really remarkable, but it's probably because it's a bigger battery than all the other phones that I've reviewed in the past. The A04 has a battery size of 5,000 milliamp hours, whereas the Nokia C2 second edition I reviewed in the past is only 2,400. So it's a lot bigger battery and a lot bigger capacity. Moving on to the camera, I'd describe the Galaxy A04's camera as actually really good for its price range. I mean, it isn't the best, like I'm not gonna rate it higher than the S23 or the iPhones or whatever, but it's really, really good for your average home photos, videos, and even taking photos of some other stuff as well. The rear camera comprises of a 50 megapixel main sensor with an f1.8 aperture, and it also has a 2 megapixel depth sensor with an f2.4 aperture. On the front, you have a 5 megapixel selfie camera with an f2.2 aperture. Unfortunately, you'll be better off using the rear camera for most photos, but the rear camera actually does a good job considering that it's less than 200 New Zealand dollars for this whole phone. Let it be known that taking photos in the dark is somewhat of a lost cause, but if you're in daylight, again, this works really well. The A04 has a few specialty camera modes, for example, a food mode where you can take photos of food and it does some camera magic with all of that. There's also a portrait mode which tries to replicate the iPhone's portrait mode with like a large aperture sort of style. It doesn't do as well as the iPhone, but it's alright considering its low price range. In addition, you've got a panorama mode, a time-lapse mode, and also your pro mode where you can adjust the ISO, the white balance, and also your exposure value. In terms of video, the A04 can film up to 1080p at 30 frames a second. Again, not the best, but it's a solid effort for a phone that's little more than 200 New Zealand dollars. So in summary, would I recommend the A04 as your phone of use? Short answer, yeah, but no. For a child's first phone, or even if you're not just going to do much on your phone anyway, if you just use it for calling, texting, taking a few photos in now and then, etc., you will be fine. And actually, it's a good phone for that. But if you want anything higher, unfortunately, this is not your price range. You'll be better off looking a bit further afield for something that's a bit more, but will give you a lot more power. On that note, thanks for watching the review of the Galaxy A04. If you want to check out the review of the Nokia C2 second edition I'll be talking about, click up there and you can see that video that I made a few months ago. And for my full Android review playlist, you can click around here somewhere as well. Thanks for watching the review of the Galaxy A04.